preliminary design for the Randall Park Neighborhood Farm. My name is YY, and I'm going to kick this off with a land acknowledgement, and then we'll introduce our team. So, we pause to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Tahitihi, the Hinoe, and the Ninchuchi, commonly known as the Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute. We further recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations who lived on the lands that make up the state of Colorado. Members of many tribal nations lived here, specifically because the land took care of them. This area was also the site of trade, hunting, gathering, and healing for many tribal nations. As inhabitants of these spaces, we honor the tribal nations' interconnected human relationship to land, air, and water. The expansion of industrialized civilization on this land came at a dire cost to these tribes and their descendants. As residents of Wheat Ridge, we commit to reconciling our problematic history by building authentic and respectful connections with members of the tribal nations who once lived here. May this acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle ongoing legacies of oppression and inequities and recognize current and future contributions of Indigenous communities in Wheat Ridge. As we move through our community, give pause to connect with the land that you are currently sitting on. Now introduce yourself spiritually. Build a relationship with Mother Earth that provides for all of our relations. Please take a moment to honor these ancestral grounds and celebrate the resilience and strength shown by people who are Indigenous. And for me, it's really important to start with this acknowledgement because I feel especially regenerative agriculture is really about that relationship between humans and the earth and all of the earth's ecological providers. And not only that, but it is also about cultivating relationships between each other. So that's how we start and enter into this program with Randall Park. And before I introduce our design team, I'll just give a little bit of history and background. Who in here knows where Randall Park is? Oh, great. For those of you that don't know, it's over between 41st and 42nd, between Chase and Gray. That's over on the more Harlan-Sheridan side of Wheat Ridge. And let me get my date correct. But we, the city, bought that land in 2021. And at that time, we did a survey to engage the people of that area to find out what they wanted to have happen there. So Randall Park, as you know, it's a big island park, and there was one house that was left on that plot. That was, I think of it as being Mr. Randall's house or Mrs. Randall's house. So when they sold the house, the city bought it, and that's when we did our first survey. The response from that survey was that the community wanted to see something there that had to do with education and agriculture. If you know, the city of Wheat Ridge already has a community garden called Happiness Gardens. Raise your hand if you have been or know where Happiness Gardens is. Great, there's an opportunity for us to do a little exploration. So Happiness Gardens is off of 44th, between like 44th and 42nd, right off of or west of Wadsworth. It's on Ammon Street. And it's about an acre, and that is closer to what we would call an allotment model. So each person there rents out a space and grows their tomatoes and potatoes and whatever it is that they want. In my 3-4 years of being there, Happiness Gardens is full, but has never been so full that has spilled over into a waiting list and been like, wow, we really got to find another place for these people. What I have seen is that there is an abundance of agriculture knowledge and the desire to grow food. So what we're doing is looking at this as an experiment of keeping the land together as one plot and getting a group or a community to take care of that farm. And I'm using the words differently. Instead of community garden, we're using the word neighborhood farm just to like conjure that image of one piece of land. Apparently, this is actually closer to a community garden because a community will be doing the gardening. but that's gonna confuse everybody. So by now, we've got a community garden, happiness, it's right over there, 50 plots, 50 people growing their tomatoes and potatoes. This is a little bit different. It's about 6,000 square feet. And we're gonna try to keep one group taking care of it throughout seasons. So it would probably be some kind of registration process, and the actual program is still to be determined. Right where we are right now is in the design phase. So that's where I will introduce our design team. We've got Jody and Ferian back here. And we decided to engage with the community at CU Denver, or CU, to do this design because I feel like it's a great way to help bolster our pipeline of young agriculture designers and stewards of the land. So that's why we decided to get a student designer, and so this is his opportunity to practice his design skills and step into a group of people. We are recording tonight, so we will put this information online for the greater community to also have opportunity to offer feedback on the design. Great, thanks for coming.
Hey, hi, my name's Jody. I'm the chair of the landscape architecture department at CU Denver. I do a lot of work with local food, agriculture in my research and things I've known by for a while. We've worked on a few projects. This is an exciting idea, an exciting project to work on. Fayun, a student in our program, is the one who did all the drawings. I actually didn't do any of that, so that's all his work. So I'll orient you just a little bit. So this is the end. This is a view of what the entry would look like as you come in. There's a parking lot just off this side over here. This is 51st. So that view is right here as you come in. 41st, sorry. If you come to the parking lot through this way here, that's what this view would be. This view is just overhead to show you the farm as a whole, as you get a sense of the space. The way it's laid out right now, and all of this is up for change and discussion. So really, we're looking for feedback here, we're looking for feedback online for those of you there. Trucks would enter here to drop off compost and other things like that. People enter down here who are members of the space. There's a shed right here for garden tools, a shade structure, and a wash station. These are accessible raised beds for people who either have mobility issues, so they can work from a wheelchair or some supporting device, but also people who have back problems who have a hard time getting down to garden at ground level can also garden here. So that's the first space when you walk in. These are all rows for crops. Whatever people feel like planting, this group that's going to take over the space will decide what to plant there and how to harvest it. And then here, down in these, one of the things about education in the space is showing people what they can do with their home front yards, what they can do with the space in the city. So each of these 3 blocks is about the size. We measured the front yards of the adjacent lots in this neighborhood. Said this is about the size of a front yard in most of the houses in the area. And you could imagine doing 3 different kinds of demonstrations there. So 3 that we kind of played with was an edible pollinator planting matrix, where it's fairly loose. You've got a fire pit, seating, a loose path, and then these are all native plants, medicinal plants, things that grow fairly aggressively, and they're perennials. Here's a version where it's an edible front yard, all focused on in-ground growing with a seating area, some smaller area for perennials and fruit space. And here's a much more modern design with raised beds, more hard surface, more of a recreational place where you can pick flowers and things for your home. So the idea is with these 3 spaces, this would be something that you could demo. Maybe it changes every 5 years or whatever. And so people can see, hey, I could do that in my front yard. Here's something that works in this climate, that's beautiful, that requires less water and produces food. You know, a lot of different ways to think about front yards. Overall, the other thing I will add, just as a quick overview, and then we can take questions, is the edges. So we have berries, food forest here, which is fruit trees, tall, small, berries, other kinds of fruit-bearing plants that all kind of build up a local ecosystem. And so the edges, all of the edges around it are also food producing. And then we've got places set aside for pollinator strips, so you can bring in pollinators to help make sure everything gets pollinated and grows well and produces food. And there's flowers and just all kinds of ecosystem benefits. So that's a quick overview of what we have here. Did I miss anything, Fayon? For YY? No? Yeah. So, any questions, thoughts? Yeah, and you can ask me a question when we talk about it, but there's also, we have spaces over here to fill out, here are the goals that came together out of previous surveys. And then, how do you think this supports space for collaboration, space for food production? Which areas, rank these areas. We have dots and pens and various ways you can put thoughts up there. And then there's spaces here for just general open comments. How important are the aspects to you of this hangout area, space for events, on-farm composting, ADA accessibility, and food distribution? And then how likely are you to do the following? Right, so you get a sense of what people actually want to do in this space and this model. And the big room for comments here and here. And then there's also lots of space on these boards in particular. If you think there are certain kinds of front yards you'd like to see modeled, and you can think about, what kind of a front yard would you want to see, or what would you want to prioritize in a model to see how it worked in Wheat Ridge. So that's also open space for comment. Yeah.
I have a couple questions, which
Sure.
I'm super excited about this, and these drawings are amazing, and
They're all Fayon, he did all the drawings.
really,
so.
really nice. We live like a few houses away, and so it's just this empty lot right now, and so we've been seeing the fence get put up. We're like, yes, like finally things are moving.
Something can happen,
It's
yeah.
not just dirt. I mean, it is right now, but there's things
Yeah.
happening. One just initial like concern looking at this is it gonna be is there gonna be enough shade cover for people to be there during the summer after like 11 a.m.?
So, I mean, there is shade over here,
Yeah.
right? But you don't want to shade this because you don't want to grow plants there.
You don't wanna shade all of it, but, and maybe the trees on the sides and the berries and things,
Yeah.
but that was just one thought I had, especially in the kind of,
We
Yeah,
size
okay.
this, you can see, this is pretty, you can see is there a better, it's 16 by 20, so that's a little bit bigger than this room.
oh, okay. So yeah,
So there's enough shade for a good 10 or 15 people easily to be over in the shade and have lunch or.
okay. Second question, and this goes back to the farm versus garden thing. Is it a possibility to have like a chicken coop or something, and that way there are eggs?
That's back to the people at Wheat Ridge, not me.
Yeah, so, I mean, we really want to incorporate animals into the farming system, just as far as regenerative agriculture goes. You gotta have them there. It is a possibility there, but I think we have a better chance of exploring a chicken cooperative at our Happiness Gardens. There's a little bit more space. That's an acre where this is like 6,000 square feet. And just to give a little bit more insight, I skipped over the second survey that we did. So after we did the initial survey, one of the ideas that we worked on was to try to get a greenhouse over there because there's a niche in the community agriculture world of greenhouses and access for community members to greenhouses. We were not able to overcome the cost barrier on that for this spot, so we went back to the community and said, what would you guys think about running this as a farm and as a group project? And so that's where we got the mission statement, and some of the goals was from that secondary survey. And what it kind of looks like could happen, like we haven't done a lot of work into the program, we need to get the design next, would be could be up to 15 people that would be managing the space and sharing the produce amongst them and the community, and dividing the labor up. So the possibility that people are gonna be out there every day, all day long is probably not what's gonna happen. It would be a couple hours for each. I could imagine maybe those people break into teams, and like maybe you get the first week and I get the second week or something like that, or we get every other day or something. It's a way to divide the labor, so that people have better access and better opportunities to farming and growing their own food.
But spatially, yeah, it's something that between the city and the people working there and scheduling, so this isn't a set design, right? This isn't like, okay, this is what's gonna happen. This is one idea to begin talking about and get people's input and get a sense really of how big things are. right? So part of it, if you think about these three, they're about the size of the front yards in front of the houses on that block, just to give you a sense of scale. One thing I will say that's fairly set, is this area over here. Just the adjacencies, not that particular design, but because we have an ADA accessible path here from the parking lot, and a personnel gate there, that makes the most sense. Plus there's, if you notice, there's tall trees here.
Yeah.
And so it makes more sense to put the shade here, so you get, more shade that you're borrowing from those trees. So I would say, this is set, plus there's power already there. It would take a lot to come up with a reason to move those things, but the rest of it's pretty much up in the air.
I was gonna say, I love the design of the three types of yards, of it being relatable to the neighborhood. I love that concept, because sometimes you look at things, you're like, how can I apply that?
Right.
It's very visible that.
Yeah. And and that'll be an interesting thing in this model too, is that it's not just that the space is relatable, but the amount of labor that goes into it, and also should look relatable, right? It shouldn't look like, that's hours and hours every day. So people will be able to see as they're walking around, how often is somebody out there actually doing something with that?
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So at Happiness Gardens, there's a coordinator. Will there be like a city coordinator? Is that, okay, okay. Because
Hope
then
so.
they have direction.
I sure hope so.
You're asking it more like how much would YY coordinate the efforts of this group?
Okay,
Is that
sure.
kind of what you're asking? That would probably depend on how motivated the group is, or not.
I could see my role being more like just making sure that the agreements that have been made are covered, right? And that if there's a challenge, that I'm there to help resolve it. But the real idea is that this is a piece of land for the community to grow food for the community, for themselves first, and then, out distributing that to the neighborhood and what makes sense to the people that are growing the food. That could be done through the food bank, it could be done through a number of ways, in some ways that I probably haven't even imagined yet.
So part two is, timeline? Do you have a timeline?
So we're hoping to have, the design finalized somewhere the first week of June
This year?
this year.
Okay.
June, mid-June, to have the design finalized and then start, implementing the design. That will probably take us through the majority of this year. I could imagine that, we'd start doing classes and engaging the community around building compost and doing some of the pathways and doing some of that work. By the time the season ends, like October, November, I think we would probably be ready to launch the application process or registration process. And have that group starting, at least meeting together through the winter so that they are prepared for when spring comes with what starts that they do. We started this year with a garden club that grew out all the baby starts in the lobby here, so I imagine they could be doing something similar to that, and then come March, April of next year, they're ready to be planting in the soil.
Last question. So the hard structures.
Mhm.
I see the fence is already there, but the city is gonna put in all of the gardens? I mean, how much is the city gonna put in? Like the raised beds, or the shade structure, or pathways, water?
We have a limited budget, so part of this exercise will be maybe to prioritize what we should build first. Maybe we can fund other parts later if they're not as highly prioritized. For the actual production, I think that would be the group that wants to work in the space.
There is water and irrigation on site already, so they don't have to bring it there. They've got to distribute it on the site. Right, take pipes out and put in spigots and do all of those things, but the water's there.
The drawings are beautiful, absolutely, it's so
That's all.
encouraging. Gosh.
Well, we can expand on the timeline for the feedback phase right now, so we have this
Okay.
meeting and then.
So we have this meeting today, and we're gonna, get your feedback in real time this evening, and then we're gonna launch the same information and make it available online for 2 weeks. We'll close that survey on May 15th. And then we can move the design, the final design, to make what makes sense for our design team. And we'll wrap that up, and I imagine there'll be another community engagement session to let you know how the design ended up and where we'll be offering opportunities to get involved. Because I know a lot of people want to be involved but maybe can't dedicate their entire summer. They want to do one-off. So that was some of the questions that we asked in the secondary survey, was how much time could you give to a program like this? People had everything from 30 hours a week to 1 hour a month. So we want to make sure that that accessibility remains open, so there will probably be community work days, probably could be community events. But those are some of the questions that we have for y'all about, like, how do you want to engage with this space? How much do you want to be there? What would you do when you're there? Those kinds of things.
So one thing I think that it kind of answers, it speaks to a lot of these different questions. Like, so these three are beautiful. I hope you all build nothing like this, right? I mean, because the whole point is, here's 3 examples of things that you could come up with, but I hope the things that get built come out of the people in the neighborhood, and the group says, hey, we want to try this or that, or we want some of that and that mixed up, or we want something that's, you know, solid meadow, right? So those 3 ideas should come from the group and from the community, rather than being something that we've designed the city builds. So that's one thing to say about timeline and construction and what gets built and how the group operates. You know, I think that those 3 in particular should really be a grassroots effort on what does the neighborhood want to experiment with and see. Right? So we did this just to give an example of how great these could be, but what they are should be something that comes out of the process. Any other questions, comments of this phase, and then we can move to, y'all can put comments up here, add things, or write down what you think. Yeah. Why, do you want to break this part more formally, and then people can ask us questions informally and start filling out the survey on the boards?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being excited. So you can ask us questions here, but then also please do fill some of these things out. We're sticking those here. Just sticking with